Hello everyone. We are privileged to have our illustrious alumnus Mr. Ketan Motwani from the batch of 2003 for the interview series through the corporate lens. He is currently the Director for Strategic Change Portfolio at Aon. With over 18 years of diverse work experience, he has made many remarkable contributions in the field of insurance and has been a part of reputed organizations like Deloitte and Mastek Limited. It will be a great learning opportunity to hear from him sharing his experiences. We also have with us our esteemed director, Dr. Pratima Sheorey, making this session even more interesting. Ma'am, I request you to take this over.
Thank you so much. Yes. Wonderful to hear from you. So Ketan, taking our story forward, I want to understand from you, how has been your journey so far? Corporate, and you've been in various positions and in a couple of organizations. I'm glad to know that you've not jump, hop and skip across different organizations over a period of time, but that you've stuck and you've stayed with one particular organization as you've been going along. So can you tell us briefly in terms of your transition from campus to corporate and to where you are today?
Sure. I mean, look, more than happy to talk about that. And I'll try and keep it brief because, as you said, I can be here all afternoon and all evening for you. So yes. I'll try and keep it brief. So firstly, thank you. Thank you for that generous introduction and having me over for this conversation. It's always great to interact with all of you and keep connecting back to the mothership, as I call it. So it's really good to be here. So I got a campus placement into Mastek. So this was right after SCMHRD. They came on campus and hey, I had a job, which was brilliant. I mean, it was a great feeling having that offer on the table and joining straight up.
What was your specialization?
So I majored in systems and then I had marketing as my minor. So I was playing with those two spaces. And Mastek was just right in the sweet spot at that point because they came in, they said, hey, we are a tech company. We want to do something different and we need people like you. So it was brilliant. Now, when I went in, turns out that reality was a little bit different to how it was sold to me. But again, it's not a surprise. Having been through SCMHRD, what I really learned was if things aren't there, you just don't crib and complain and moan. You just go there and do it. You don't wait for anybody to define a career path for you. You don't wait for anybody to define roles. You just say, hey, this is what I want to do. Find sponsors around you and just do it. And that's exactly what I did. So when I joined Mastek, because this was the first time they were taking management graduates for their management trainee program, they were still testing and learning. It was a bit of a trial for them. Now, Mastek are a great tech company. They are used to hiring lots of engineers every year and having technical roles, but they'd never quite done management trainees. So ours was the first batch. And not surprisingly, they thought, hey, let's put all our trainees through the same training program. And that included the engineer trainees and management trainees. So here, that was a bit of a shock initially. So month one at Mastek, I was coding in Java and scratching my head around, why am I doing this? So there was a journey. There was a bit of a maturity for both the management trainees as well as the organization. And we started with, hey, let's finish the training program because the DNA of a company, the bread and butter revenue of the company comes from tech. So it's good to understand tech. It's good to learn tech. But from there on, I remember 3-4 of us, we got together and we carved out the career paths they could have for an MBA. So we did all the work, like a little project on, hey, this is how an MBA should add value to Mastek. These are the 4 areas. This is what Infosys does. This is what Deloitte do. This is what TCS does. Now, and we did a presentation to the CEO and asked them to invest and believe in us to create those new roles. And we were successful. So that was a turning point, which was, hey, we want to do something different in a tech company. So I started off in Mumbai. Within the first 12 months, I started off as a project management officer, which was one of the career paths we defined for an MBA, which gave me an end-to-end holistic view of how we run tech projects, how any company runs tech projects without quite getting into coding Java. So I was surrounded by really experienced program managers, program directors, and I got to learn a lot from them. After the first 12 months in Mumbai, they said, hey, you've done well here. Now we want to replicate what you've done in our Manchester office. Mm-hmm. So would you mind going to Manchester for a few months? So I moved to Manchester for 6 months to say, hey, we've done this great work and created a new role and a new function for management trainees. Let's replicate that at their Manchester location. And then the rest is history. So I came in for 6 months and I never moved back. So I was there for 2 years in Manchester. Then I moved to their corporate headquarters in the UK in Reading, where I joined their business consulting team. And then I was part of the solution and strategy team, which is where I got involved with financial services, insurance. And then at the right point, after 6 or 7 years, I thought, hey, I need to now do something which is more focused to where I want to head in the future, because Mastech was a tech company. And that's where I made the leap to Deloitte, and I joined the insurance transformation practice. I spent 9 years with them, working with a number of insurance clients across the globe. And the consulting lifestyle was hard. It was picking up your suitcase every Monday morning, coming back home on Friday evening, and then going back on the road on Monday morning. So it was hard, but immense learning, surrounded by a great set of people. The client challenges were really interesting. It was a bit like SCMHRD being repeated all over again every week.
Okay.
And that
so
was
tell
brilliant.
Me, what has been your most interesting project? I mean, you seem to have been involved in many things in your career, even, and then now you're of course with Aon. And I want you to speak about that. But since you spoke about so many interesting, once you tell us what you're doing at Aon now, please tell us what was, in your opinion, not just interesting, but you felt it was more transformational. It was something that enabled you to have a larger impact, on the people around you.
Look, absolutely. So, I'll pick that up. And as I was coming to the end of my journey at Deloitte, and I wouldn't say end, I mean, they're a great company, great organization, but my personal circumstances meant having young kids, and that traveling week in, week out wasn't really conducive. So I wanted to move to an organization which gives me a bit more certainty in terms of my work patterns. And that's when I came across Aon. I started off having coffees with them, and that evolved into, hey, we want to create this new team that focuses on strategic change. Now that was brilliant, because I love that sort of stuff around, hey, I want to go and influence it and leave my mark on something brand new. And that's what I've been doing for the last 18 months now, which is just create a new strategic change team and look after all the strategic change initiatives we have across various business units. So that's been brilliant. Now going back to your specific question, I think what I've learned and what I've found interesting and challenging over years is when there is an element of culture change or people change involved. I think that's the hardest. It's very easy to implement a new system. It's very easy to launch operations in a new geography. It's very easy to say, hey, we're going to do some acquisitions. But where it really becomes challenging and interesting for people like me is when you're actually looking at changing the culture, changing the way people behave, and that mind shift often takes years. So the programs, typically, my programs, some of the bigger programs take 2 to 3 years. So they're huge programs, lots of moving parts. And you need to think about, hey, this is a 3-year culture change journey. Now, yes, we're going to change systems. Yes, we're going to change the process. Yes, we're going to offshore work from one location to the other. Yes, we're going to look at how millennials are coming into the workplace and changing the way we treat our customers and our employees. But along all that, what we are on is a big culture change journey, and you need to take little baby steps to make sure that sticks and stays. Otherwise, any change is not sustainable. You implement a new system, and that's it. Within 6 months' time, people have broken the rules, and it's as good as what it was in the past.
Yeah. So do you want to, make a reference to a specific project or type? I don't want to know the specifics, I think, for the sake of the students, in terms of especially projects that you may have done in the beginning of your career. Sometimes, people have this feeling that they want to do strategy or they want to do something really important in the beginning of their life or their corporate life. It doesn't really work like that. However, you can yet make big changes even at junior levels. And do you want to talk something about what you did at Mastech? Because you seem to have some interesting pieces there. Would you like to sort of detail a little more?
Absolutely. So look, when I started at Mastech, I think initially firstly, the organization, the senior management took some time to understand the value a management trainee from SCMHRD could add. Once we went through that hump, I was then on a project, first in Mumbai and then in Manchester. It was the same project. And this was a project for a big financial services organization. And initially, nobody knew what to do. They said, hey, we've got this great person. He seems to talk the right thing. Senior management think we should give him a go to adding value here. But what do we really do? I mean, what does he do when he comes in on a Monday morning? And the way I started off was actually, firstly, get involved, firstly, build relationships. And I think that was such a big learning. I think you go and you talk to the senior management, the senior people in the project, the middle management, and don't forget the people who are actually junior management or technical, because that's where you build credibility. You build your technical competence, you build knowledge, understanding. You also understand the political dynamics, which I think are very important in any new organization. Armed with all of that, I then started to work with my mentors, and that was the other learning. Early stage of your career, it's really important to find a mentor. Find a mentor, find a sponsor who believes in you, and more importantly, whom you look up to. And in my experience, initially when I started my career, I was a little hesitant. Hey, somebody needs to tell me this person is your mentor. But then as I progressed, I realized some really senior people, they love being a mentor. And all it takes is a conversation or a coffee with them to say, hey, I want to learn from you. Would you mind being my mentor? And most people are more than up for it. And I think that's really important when you're just starting off your career. Have somebody that you look up to, build credibility, build relationships. The other thing I would add is, again, as I've gone through various stages of my career, what I've realized is early on, you need to pick a specialism. It doesn't matter what the specialism is, whether you are on a project or you're working in marketing, but just pick a niche. Try and become an expert in something. So don't be jack of all and master of none. Just pick one or two things. In my case, I said, by coincidence, my first project was with an insurance company. I didn't choose it. I just became I just went on an insurance project. Then 2 or 3 projects down the line, I realized, hey, I can be an insurance expert. And I think that really helped fast track my career, going from junior management, middle management, up to senior management. And then as you go higher up, you realize you then need to start broadening your skill set again. So you go from being a specialist to a generalist again. But I think early stages of your career, it's really important to just pick a flag. It doesn't matter what you pick, because as you become senior, you're going to have to broaden it again. But I think one of my mentors once told me, think very hard and carefully on what you want to be famous for. And that line stuck in. So I think I still reflect on that. So what is Ketan famous for? So if somebody comes and says, why should I go and talk to Ketan? they should think it's those two things, and he knows those two things really well. Nobody else knows them better. And I think it's important to just bring that distinction early on. To your point, Pratima ma'am, when you start off, you think, hey, I want to do big stuff. You're really ambitious, but I think it takes a good few years and a few gray hair before you get there. So you need to keep persevering. Just pick one or two things that you want to be famous
kids
for.
come with, oh no, sorry, not kids. The students today come with gray hair already. So I don't think it has anything to do with age. And I presume, therefore, when you say gray hair, you mean experience. You mean, you know, getting the edges knocked off a bit, and then you're ready to go.
I think you're right. I think it's more than age. It's experience to a wide variety of situations, experience on dealing with a number of different people. And that's been a big learning. I think every time I go on a project, I try and work with people who've got a different working style. And I think that's so important. Just look at the styles of people around you. I think getting along with people, building the relationship, networking is so important. And that takes time. You're going to have to go through that many projects or that many teams to absorb and create your own style ultimately.
Okay, interesting. So tell me now, since this is, and I am at SCMHRD, what have been your, apart from, of course, the chili powder treatment, what are some of your fondest memories and biggest learnings from SCMHRD?
It's a good question. It's got me thinking, which is great. I think things I remember now. It's been a very long time since I left the institute. It's coming up to 20 years very shortly. So time has just flown by. Yeah. I mean, the images that come to my mind is so I started off in the Nasik campus. So I was first batch. So we had the first year in the Nasik campus, and second year we all came to Pune, and it was a bit of to and fro. So my memories were just walking into an institute at Nasik, which had brilliant infrastructure, great teachers, but we were the pilot batch. And as Professor Pillai used to call it, you are the pioneers, which also meant there were a number of rough edges. Everybody was finding their feet around. And I think that experience has just stuck on over years, because every time I enter a new organization, new team, my expectation is, you know what, there's going to be nothing. And I need to create everything from scratch, find my way around it. And I think I just go back to that. And every couple of years, even now, I'm reminded of the fact that, hey, it's fine, we'll build it. And it gives us an influence to shape it in the way we want and leave your personal mark on it. So that's something that really sticks out. The other thing that sticks out is, again, the intense routine we had and the diverse experience. And when I talk about diverse experience, it was the subjects, the activities. I think you just go and throw yourself at everything. So one morning you were learning about psychiatry, psychology, and in the afternoon you'd sit in the lab, look at Java. And I think that exposure, that breadth of exposure is so important, because until you look at all that, you wouldn't know what you're attracted to and what you're interested in. So I think those two things, which is, one is the breadth of exposure, second is the realization that things are not perfect in this world. And that's just the nature of how life is. And you can't sit and complain and wait for somebody else to do it. You need to just pick up and just do it and show everybody else how it's done.
Yeah, so internal locus of control more important than external locus of control.
100%.
Yeah? Okay. Do you think, you know, diversity? So today, diversity has many flavors. Okay,
Yes.
We're talking about gender, we're talking about geography, we're talking about levels. In India, we are also talking about people from economically and socially underprivileged backgrounds. So, you know, so before you move to the UK, or even in the UK right now, how important is this animal called diversity? And how does it impact your career?
Yeah, it's important. I think it's an important subject, and it's worth talking about. I think the world events at the minute unfortunately lead us to see some images on television which cause an immense amount of discomfort. And that just brings the question in of diversity even more, and we're all consciously thinking about it. I think personally for me, diversity has been really important over the last 15, 18 odd years I've been in the UK. I mean, I've been a strong proponent of diversity. When I'm building teams, I do try and ensure we make it as diverse as possible. And when I say diversity, as you said, it's the big wide definition of diversity. It's diversity in thought. It's diversity in the way people have been brought up and their own journeys, because that's what leads to diversity of thought. And I think, to me, that's a key ingredient in building a high performance team. So every time I walk into a team, if I find that we don't have the diversity of thought, if you're all thinking the same and if you're all agreeing, there is a problem, because we can only take the company in one direction. I think you need that healthy tension. You need diverse opinions. You need to understand what the broad spectrum of society thinks. And I think all the things that you called out, whether it's age, sex, religion, age, I think all of that contribute to the way people think. It just structures what defines people. And I think hence diversity is important, because it influences how people think. It influences the behavior in teams. It influences the behaviors in the workplace. And also, look, the society could do with a bit more fairness. We all know there's quite a bit of unfairness in the spectrum that we interact with.
Yeah, okay. So that's a very nice perspective. Connected to that, I would feel, you were speaking about, change management and culture and people changes. And those are sometimes the most daunting, difficult, challenging, interesting. That's what I'm gathering from what you're saying. And I feel you sort of added the diversity piece on that, meaning that all of this is, so diversity typically, or, just like they say, the D&I departments now, or, whatever departments or verticals, as you may call it, in different organizations, are largely looking at culture, age, not culture, age, but gender, okay, or geography. This is what they're looking at. But I think it's mindset and all of those pieces as well, which seem to be important. So, if you want to really survive, and I've picked up some cues, but I yet want to ask you about it, which is, what do you think are some of the key values that one must possess in order to be able to flourish in your career? And I don't just mean a job, whether you have an NGO, whether, we've got a bunch of people from your batches or from previous or even thereafter who are doing a great job with selling vada pav, who are doing a great job, training horses, who are doing a great job doing financial reporting, singing in Bollywood, acting in Bollywood. So we've got a whole spectrum of people there, right? And I just don't want to restrict it to just corporate. But, overall, if you want to be a successful professional, no matter what profession you pick, okay, what do you think would be some of the key virtues or values that you would want to promote, or you would want to talk about?
So again, that's a great question, and that just takes me back to a workshop we had when I was at SCMHRD, because I think that triggered off that entire thinking of what does good look like for me. So I can't remember the exact faculty, but I think we had a 3-day workshop back at SCMHRD on creating your vision. And this was all about trying to understand who you are.
Was it the gentleman from MECO? Was it the gentleman from MECO?
Could have been. I can't remember the name.
Tamoli? Was it Professor Tamoli?
Could be. I can't. I'm sorry.
You lost
Yeah.
the name.
That
Okay,
name rings a
no
bell.
problem.
That name rings a bell. It
Yeah,
could be
yeah,
him.
yeah.
So I think that was great because it led us to, and personally to me, I think it led me to do a lot of introspection. I think things like vipassana and meditation and everything that we did also got a great amount of introspection and looking inwards. But I think that workshop for me was a tipping point because by the end of 3 days, I was articulating what happiness means to me and what success means to me. And the way I've looked at it, and it's consistent when I looked at it like 20 years ago and now, was really being balanced across various aspects of my life. And by that, I mean being balanced and being at peace with where my career is headed, where my family is headed, and thirdly, where my own personal interests lie. And to me, I think it's the triangle of those three things, which is, are you happy with the work you do? Is the work giving you, is the work keeping you motivated? Is it giving you whatever is it that you need to be happy? Second, are you maintaining good relationships with the people that are close to you? So that's your friends and your family. And third was, is it giving me, or are aspects of my life giving me space to explore my own personal interests and hobbies? And I've noticed that the balance of those three things changes as I go through different phases of life. So there was a phase of life where I was focused only on one dimension of the triangle, which is, hey, my career. I don't mind working like 18-hour days, and I don't mind traveling every week. But then I went into a different phase of life and had to balance that out. So I think it's keeping an eye on those three things is what personally worked for me. And look, I completely recognize the definition of success and happiness is different for every person.
You
But
know,
I would,
nowadays, a lot of students are very kicked about this um, package,
yes,
the CTC.
yes.
And do you want to comment on that? I know you've risen far above that, but, uh, you know, a lot of students are just getting into it. And for them, it is, you know, is it 15 LPA? Is it 20? Is it 25? Is it 30? Is it 40? Is it 50? And so that sort of gives them a high. And
Sure.
would you like to comment on that?
So my experience, I think, look, as you're finishing your MBA, it's such an important thing because that's what we all measure against ourselves against. That's what the entire education fraternity in India publishes in Business Today, India Today, and all newspapers. So of course everybody is
Yes.
looking at it. It's an interesting matrix. But I've often wondered that, hey, has somebody gone and looked at those people joined? Where are they in 12 months' time or 24 months' time? What happens to the CTC? What's happening to career paths? And besides salary, are the people living happy and balanced lives? And in a number of countries, and I know I digress, but in a number of countries, especially in the Nordic regions, countries have started introducing a happiness index where they're saying, hey, this is not just about economic prosperity. This is about overall well-being and happiness of an individual. So yes, the amount of money you earn is one dimension, but there are 4 or 5 other dimensions that people need to be looking at. So that's part one of the story. The other thing is, look, yes, CTC is great because you can go off from campus earning great amount of money, but the corporate world is tough, it's hard, and you have to earn your stripes all over again. So yes, you might start off with a great package, but if in 12 months time you don't do what's expected, well, that package can drop or go back or reduce. And I think from there on, I think the first 2 or 3 years of your career are quite foundational, because I think that is what creates a good solid sounding that is what creates a good solid foundation for you to carry your earnings forward. And I think it's a good balancing act, because when you go into a company, nobody knows, you've never done a job that's expected from you. So I think it's a bit of a calibration. So I would say the first 2 or 3 years are calibration, and what students should focus on is, hey, where do I want to be in 3 years' time after I've left campus, and not where I start off in terms of CTC. I've heard stories of people just doubling, tripling, quadrupling their salaries in 3 years' time because they went in, they smashed the job out of the park, and they proved their worth. And corporate India is, or corporates across the world are more than ready to pay where you can add value. So focus on where you can add value in the first 2 or 3 years of your career, and the CTC will calibrate itself. You'll end up in the right place.
Tell me, right now there is a lot of uncertainty and a lot of stress. So we're hearing all these horror stories of depression and stress and people losing direction. So, one, I want to understand from you if you have any advice for our current students right now. And at an organizational level, how are you dealing with this? Because it's not just, stress is there always, right? But COVID has added a different flavor. And especially in India, Ketan, if you look at it, we were hit by COVID, then Amphan, then Nisarg, the floods, COVID, and then we've got the irritants, major or minor, as you may call it, China, Pakistan. So the current, and therefore the impact on the general economic well-being, right? So these are very, very stressful times across the world, and more so in a country like India. So, your comments on this and how your organization is dealing with this.
Sure. So I'm going to call out 2 things. So first, I'll share with what my journey has been over the last 6 months, especially since COVID hit us, and the way my organization dealt with it, and the way I've seen other companies deal with it. So I'll talk about that first, and then I'll talk about a little bit of my view of where the world is headed, and where India is headed. I think it's an interesting time for various different reasons. So firstly, so when this hit us in March, look, I work in the insurance sector, and we are at the forefront of predicting disasters. So we are actually the industry where we get a headwind of what's happening, because we then have to react quite fast to it and make sure our clients are protected. We are protecting big things like nuclear power plants, submarines. We have commercial insurance, liability insurance for various companies, for banks, for retailers. So we were at the forefront. We started getting data back end of February, early March, that things are getting sour. We were actually working with scientists to look at what's happening, the trends, and where this is headed. And we went into lockdown first week of March. So our offices were shut. And this was much before other industries did it. The other industries were waiting for the government to give anything. But we shut down our offices first week of March. We all shifted working remotely overnight. We bought new equipment to work from home. This is my office now. I'm just here locked in Monday to Friday. And it's been phenomenal, because the first couple of weeks were shaky. And in work like mine, where you're used to standing in front of people all the time, running workshops, getting people to see what needs to change, we thought, hey, this is going to be a challenge. How are we going to do it remotely? But I think the team has done brilliantly over the last 3 months. This is now normal. And we are thinking, hey, why would we ever go back to office again? So even though offices will probably open back end of this year, we've started to now open offices September, October sort of time. More offices will open. But we don't expect to go back to Monday to Friday working in the office. I think what might end up happening, even when we have a vaccine and the world changes, we'll probably be in the office 1 day a week, 2 days a week, because we've got so used to now working like this, and we're getting all the work done. The productivity is higher. Now, some of the changes I've had to make personally is actually, when you're in the office, you would be more focused on work and the professional impact people are making. In this environment, I think we've had to take more of a holistic view. I've had to have more one-to-ones with my team. We talk about, what's happening in people's lives, their parents, their families. Every now and again, we get kids and pets in front of the camera. And I think we are all now more human, whereas earlier we were all really corporate. And actually, that's brought the team together because we appreciate where the tension points are. And we are looking at not just work, but we're looking at what's the right answer for the well-being of ABC person. And work is just one dimension. So I think we've all been surprised, and I've been impressed with the way the team has risen up to the challenge. So my only take there is, look, I think across the world, and I'm sure it's going to happen in India soon because we've got teams in India as well. This is going to be the new normal for a very long time to come. So even when we get the vaccine, there are other viruses out there, and things are going to be difficult for 2 or 3 years until medicine catches up and keeps pace. So don't worry, there will be a few hiccups, there will be a few bumps in the road, but everybody's going to get used to working like this because everybody's in the same boat. So this will all normalize. That's one. I think second is, so I think what's going to happen, and initially when we started, we said, hey, lockdown, we need to only focus on things that are important. So we stopped all projects that were non-strategic, non-value adding. But what's happening now is we are now focusing on how do we take that leap to become more digital. And I know a number of other companies, sectors are all thinking about more digitization. And I think the focus will tilt towards companies that operate more in the knowledge economy space. So knowledge is power going forward. This is no longer going to be a case of you have to turn up at your desk. It's going to be a case of, hey, who's the most knowledgeable company, individual, team? So knowledge is going to be even more important. So that's one dimension. It's going to now just really rapidly increase pace. The second dimension is, I'm sure you've heard this before, with the rise of millennials in the workforce, all of the students included, we are getting more used to the gig economy. So what I mean by the gig economy is the likes of Uber and Airbnb, where people don't have jobs. They are taking little pieces of work based on their personal work-life balance and based on their availability. And I see the knowledge economy and the gig economy coming together now. So people like us, we will say, hey, I only want to work in the mornings because in the afternoon I want to pick up my kids, spend time with them. That's the new normal. So companies are reacting to that and responding by offering more flexibility in the workplace and offering more flavors of what work means and what various roles mean. And I think there will be a rise in the gig economy. Workers, companies will be more accepting. And I think that's all brilliant news for somebody who's an SCMHRD at the minute, worrying about, hey, where's all this headed? I think there will be so much more flexibility in the kind of work we do. And you've started virtual classes already. It's all going to get people ready to join companies. We've started recruiting again. We are doing interviews remotely. We are onboarding people remotely. So it's all being normalized. So I think in a few months' time, this will be the new normal.
Yeah, it's easier, it's easier on the environment. It's easier on the time. It's easier in terms of not to have to maintain large brick and mortar infrastructure. So I think, yes, it's here to stay, and it's more than welcome. So before my final question, which is your advice to the current batch, but is there anything at all from SCMHRD to date that you feel you would want to do differently, and why?
What would I want to do differently? Okay, good question. I think early on in my career, I was probably too hung up on the titles and the designation of what's my role being called, what's the title, how will it look on LinkedIn, how will it look on my CV. Now, in hindsight, after all these years, I think none of that matters. None of that matters. I think All that is caught out very soon. I know people who've got really inflated titles and designations, but really, when you boil down to what is it that you really do on a day-to-day basis, where do you add value? And if I go back to the start of my career, I think that's what I would do differently. I would not stress so much and worry about, hey, am I a senior project manager, or am I a senior manager or a junior manager? None of that matters. I think what really matters is what you do, where you add value, what do the people around you think of the value you're adding, and that's the most important thing.
Yes. Okay. So, any advice to the current batch in these times?
I think these are tough times for everybody globally. I think the pandemic is unprecedented. It's leading to a lot of uncertainty. Corporate results have just started to come out, and the results are mixed. We've got some sectors which are taking quite a hit initially. But actually, having been through 2 recessions now in my professional career, the dot-com recession, the financial crisis, so this is the 3rd recession. I know when I went through the first recession in 2000, I was still doing MBA, and I was thinking, hang on a minute, what's happening to the world? But look, it takes 2 or 3 years, and it all works out. It stabilizes. That's the nature of our financial markets. That's the nature of the way economies run. In fact, during this recession, the economists are predicting the recovery will be faster and quicker, because there is no fundamental weakness in our financial system like it was in the previous 2 recessions. This is just a case of, hey, everything was shut down. Once the vaccine comes in, things will start to ease out. As long as companies adopt and our customers adopt to this new way of working, it'll all be fine. So I think my advice to students would be, do not worry. Talk to people around you. Talk to any mentors that you know in the industry, and in a few months' time, it'll all be fine. Yes, it may not be like you wanted it before you started MBA, but think of the first 2 or 3 years, and I think you'll find that in 3 years' time, you'll probably be in a much better space than you thought you would be had you been in the conventional world.
Yeah. So, in fact, Ketan, I feel that currently the world is like an oyster. So you can make what you want of it. You can, change the perspective. You can begin in a new paradigm. You can do something completely different, which never happened before. But now these are different times. And so you adapt, you manage, and you can do so much more and very differently. And
it's throwing up so many opportunities. It's throwing up so many new opportunities. I know people who are now thinking about starting a new business just because the way we are living and working has changed. So there was a view that, hey, we're not going to go into offices, so all the restaurants around the city center are not going to get any business. And that's right. But I know also that actually, if everybody's working from home, what you're going to do for lunch? I'm going to go and pop out to my neighborhood sandwich store. So I think that's a business opportunity, and there's a problem waiting to be solved. So look for such problems. How will our life change, and what new problems will it give us? And I think, as you said, the world is an oyster. The world will always have problems to solve.
What you make of it is, as good as you can get. Absolutely. And let me tell you, because of these changed times, Ketan, you've been able to give time and spend time with us across the 7 seas, so to say. Okay. And I'm so glad that you made this time for us. And, there's so many things that I wrote down while you were speaking. And I thought these are important. You need to work with different types of people. You need to keep networking, try and work on something that you can create from scratch, look for new routines, look for change, push new frontiers, build relationships, build credibility, find a mentor. In the beginning, you may be a generalist, get into a specialist role. As you rise up the ladder, you become a generalist again. So these are some of the, what do you want to be famous for? I love that one. You must take it back to your mentor and tell him it's really an amazing thought. And I think This is the thought that everybody should have in their minds when they're going forward. So is there anybody else who I've asked too many questions and queried you too much. So the alumni team, you guys want to ask anything?
Hello.
Yeah.
So there is one question from us. The role of technology or analytics will play a big role, in this crisis. So how do you think that companies should adapt to such kind of new technology? Are they doing it? What your advice or your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, I've lost count of the number of times I get approached by tech companies to sell me some analytics offering or tech offerings. And my take is simple. Actually, I think companies and any analytic platforms offerings, they need to get closer to where the business problems lie. And while, look, we can sit in a bubble and create a fantastic new analytics platform, which is all really magical. You put some data in, it throws out fancy reports. But actually, if you go down to, hey, what problem is it solving for our customers in our industry? That's where the value lies. So stay close to what is it giving us. The other observation I would share is, I mean, look, when you look at all the packages and platforms on paper, it's brilliant. But if you go back to the organization maturity with data and analytics, you will be surprised and sometimes even shocked that sometimes you can add so much value and make so much difference by just doing the basics right, by just sorting basic operational data problems. And I think there is so much work to be done there before you put any more fancy algorithms and fancy packages. So yes, fancy algorithms and analytics packages have their space, but you need to have your basics done correctly. And that would be my guidance to anybody who's working in that space. Don't just go after the fancy bells and whistles. Look at, are you getting the basics done right first? Look at what the customer use cases are. Where is it going to add value to the business? Otherwise, what you share or what you present is just a toy. And I'll say, hey, great toy, but it's of no use to me.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. In fact, to your question, I would really feel that today we are in the race to equip even our students to look and analyze their own data.
Yeah.
It'll take them a while to get to a level where they can ask an analytics department to do the analysis for them. In the first 5 years of your career, or even later on, who knows, you'll have to do your analysis yourself. And so,
100%. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, look, I'm a big proponent of data, and data is really important for sound decision making. And I believe, look, in the first principle, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And that's what I learned on my first project as we were running a Six Sigma program from it. So hey, you got to measure it to improve it. So I completely believe that. But we got to be careful that we understand the maturity of the current data and the business before trying to do anything too fancy.
Perfect. Wonderful. It's been wonderful speaking with you. We're very close to cutoff time, and I'm going to stick to the British sense of time and not the Indian sense of time. We've got a couple of minutes left. Do you have any questions for us, Ketan? And of course, I have a request to make. We have a subject in change management, and it'll be nice if you can address the students for about half an hour, 45 minutes. We'll fix up a schedule, maybe sometime in September.
Yeah, sure. Look, firstly, I'm more than happy to support, and more than happy to get involved and share my experience, because I think it's important, and that's what helped me when I was going through my SCMHRD journey. So learning from people who've got some scars, and I think I've learned the most from my scars and the projects where things didn't go right and where they failed. So yeah, more than happy to share all that. I think in terms of my questions, I think it's more a thought than a question. In terms of how do we take the alumni engagement to the next level, and it's always something we play with. So when we speak with batchmates, we've got a WhatsApp group that we often interact on, or when a group of friends gets together, we say, hey, we are talking to each other, but wouldn't it be great if there was something that brought many batches together? And it'll be good to understand your perspective on, hey, how do we, now that we've got a
You
critical
know,
mass going on for that many years?
yes. No, so COVID has thrown up very, very interesting possibilities.
Yes.
You know, the ongoing year, I don't think we will be able to do any physical alumni meets. But what we can do is, you know, so since it's the internet and we are on a live connection, we could connect to batches across the world. And
Yeah.
I think, you know, that was something that was on my mind, that maybe, you know, by August or so, August or maybe even September, you know, every week we could connect to one batch, no matter which country they are in, at a convenient time. You know? So evenings typically tend to be comfortable for most people, because, and today because of work from home, it's not like you can't get to them during their work hour time, right? So an open kind of a discussion where you could interact with each other as well, and you know, we could have a couple of questions thrown in, some suggestions, something like that. I think that was what was on my mind in terms of taking it forward, such that we connect with each batch and connect with people who are all across those various batches, and try and see how we can, you know, build and see if there is a synergy from there that we can use. We've got people in all sectors, all kinds, you name it, and we've got SCMHRD alumni over there. And I'm not just referring to human resource. I mean, they're across the board in different types of sectors. So
I mean, there's so much we could learn from each other. And look, I think you said it. It's such a great opportunity, because if COVID hadn't happened, we're all in a suit in our offices. So this is brilliant. I mean, this is lunch hour and people can just log in no matter where they are in the world. And maybe just have a think on whether you could slice them in a different way. So yes, typically we do it by batch or geography, but would there be any method to do it by maybe a subject? So have a discussion or a chapter.
You know, what would I think, you know,
just thinking
actively, I think splicing it by geography would be better, because we want to be mindful of the time zones, and we don't want somebody getting up in the middle of the night to interact. That would not be good. So you know, being mindful of that, I think by geography is a good idea. You know, and so this is just thoughts that are coming to my mind, because, you know, we've got these series fixed up, and so we're hoping to take them forward. Yes, SCMHRD has come a long way. You'd be happy to know, Ketan, we are one among 14 in the country to have AACSB accreditation.
That's
we
great.
have 3 programs now. We've got 3 programs. We've got an MBA in infrastructure development and management, and an MBA in business analytics, and of course the MBA executive, which we always had for many years now. So we've got 4 programs, 3 full-time, 1 part-time, and we've got a student strength of about 800 senior 800. And juniors.
Wow.
That's no, not huge. All one batch. It's 2 batches.
It's still 800 is huge. That's brilliant.
So we get about 350 coming in. 300, between 300 and 350 coming in. And that's the same number that is joining us this year. We thought that COVID and the fact that Pune was a sort of a hotspot currently, because it's an urban center. That's the reason why. That people would be skeptical about their children joining and whatever. Doesn't seem to be. We've begun classes full-fledged, and well, they're saying, you know, will we get the typical student life? And I said, yes, of course you can. So the committee selections are on. So right now, in about 15-20 minutes or so, the junior teams are being selected.
Oh, wow. Excellent. That's exciting. There must be a
Oh,
lot of buzz then. Yeah. Oh,
over
it's great
Microsoft Teams. Yeah, so
it's great.
even
I mean,
that is
it's great
happening.
to hear. It's great to hear all the success of the institute, and I think well done. You've been doing great work and
So
taking the institute forward. So that's really good.
we are hoping
And
for advice. We are hoping for support. You know, we are hoping that you guys, all of you, will partner with us in this journey, and I'm sure we've got a long ways to go.
yeah, and look, as you said, hey, will we get the same student life and the same world? I think the answer is no, because the world has changed. I think this is an inflection point, and I think it will be a great learning for the new students of SCMHRD, because this is the new world. When they finish their MBA, guess what? I'm now getting people. I'm doing interviews remotely, and they are all starting remotely. I've never seen them, so I think it's going to be a great learning in line with
Our entire
the world.
1820 batch has joined remotely.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Excellent.
So it was a 25th batch, by the way.
Oh, 25th batch. Wow.
Yeah, 1820 was the 25th batch. 95 was the first batch.
Yeah.
So this was the 25th batch that passed out.
Excellent.
Landmark for us in more ways than one.
Excellent. No, it's a big landmark, big landmark. And you've come such a big distance. And it always gives me pleasure to hear about SCMHRD and to hear from you whenever you or the other students reach out from across the world. So it's been really good.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Ketan. You know, lovely having you here. And we look forward to more interactions with you in the future. Thank you so much.
Thanks for reaching out, Pratima, ma'am, and it was great talking to you, and the alumni team for arranging this. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.